Welcome back to the fourth episode of Daily Book Dose. Today we're going to be talking about the fourth chapter from Family and Nation. And the fourth chapter is quite a long one. Look, it's talking about creating healthy individuals, it's talking about freedom, tolerance, and also finally, what it's doing is talking about education, right? So we're going to be splitting up this chapter into two or three different parts. And today we're going to be talking about the first part of the chapter, which is about fear and fear and anger. And what it comes down to is that old 90s or early 2000s song from Puff Daddy and Notorious B.I.G. More money we got, the more problems we have. Well, it's the same thing which is discussed in this chapter about fear. And it suggests that the main reason that we have fear is once we've accumulated wealth, that the fear of losing that wealth, right? So that's the biggest fear that we have as men. And it says this in two very nice ways. Um, Freedom makes man fearless, and slavery instills fear. Freedom and fearlessness are interlinked. We can't have one without the other, but being free, why are we fearful? It's because we are slaves to our bondages, right? And whatever we accumulate in life, we are bonded to that accumulation, right? We love it, we want it, we have a passion for it, and we don't want to do anything without it. So we have that bondage. Because of that bondage, we are enslaved to it, and because we're enslaved to it, we are really fearful of losing it. And it also says that although there are many sources of fear, the main source is excessive accumulation of wealth. Wealth passes through three stages: earning, preserving, and then destroying. A person's mind, knowingly or unknowingly, is always bottled by the security or otherwise of its wealth. Right, so it's just saying the same thing again. Once you accumulate it, you've got the passion of accumulating it, then the passion of keeping it, and then the fear of it getting destroyed. So that fear is really what keeps people up at night. Um, and it says, just as we need to put a pause on things or stop on things, that there are times when we probably need to put a pause or stop on our accumulation for wealth as well. Another really cool thing in this chapter is when it talks about, the different health problems we have because of this fear, right? And it says, anger leads to high blood pressure, right? So when we're angry, we start getting, those impulses, and our blood pressure goes up. I don't think there's much we can do to argue with that. Tendency to protest irritate the bowels, right? So when we're always arguing, our bowels get irritated, ulcers. I don't think there's much we can do to argue with that. Insults and humiliation lead to disorders of the digestive system. So this is also, when we're constantly being insulted or when we feel really humiliated, sometimes our appetite goes away, right? So I mean, that's probably one of the things. Intense lust leads to chest pain, and unjustifiable desires linked to skin disease. Now, this I don't know. I mean, how far it's true is the first time I heard this, but it's there. Mental suffocation leads to headaches. And finally, jealousy leads to ulcers, and too much ambition leads to diabetes. That also I heard the first time, but quite interesting as well. Then what it goes on to is talk about that the vital element of harmony is tolerance, right? So when we're fearful, there isn't that harmony in our life anymore, right? But if we have that harmony, the causes, I mean, the effect or the cause is probably tolerance as well, right? So we're tolerative of things, and that's led to from something else which it says in this chapter. Um, Human thought has always been perverted to suit the interests of those in power. This constant conflict has been a common feature throughout the history of mankind. And this is very obviously explained, or in history. I'm reading a pretty cool book about Pakistan and its history of the ISI, which is the secret service of the Pakistani government, the Inter-Services Intelligence Bureau, ISI. And one thing that really intrigued me is ISI was an organization that was really suppressing the opposition party or the leader of the opposition. And that leader of the opposition, as soon as he came into power, one of the first things he did was completely take hold of that agency, right, and continued running it to ensure that it was going to be constantly suppressing the next leader of the opposition so that he stays on power. And that really shows that, it's an agency which is loved by those in power, but it really suppressed those who were not in power, right? And throughout history of humanity, it's always been like that. Like whenever someone has got the levers of power, they want not only the status quo, but they want all of those things which can keep that position for them. And that is something which is, constantly suppressing any change or any other leaders coming up. And even though that has been the biggest restricting force of that new leader coming up, as soon as he or she does become the new leader, they don't dismantle it, but they just tweak it so that it can serve their cause. And I think this is one of the things that us as humans probably like power so much, that even though we know how difficult it is to get things changed, once we get into that position, we want to, keep that position and do anything in our power to have it that way. And it comes down to the fear of change, but the fear of change when things are going very well. When things are going bad, we don't fear change that much. Then we're much more tolerant to change, right? Because we want to grow. Look, we did this chapter again. One part of it. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the other part of this chapter, which is education. The first part of this chapter, though, it's about freedom, though it's about tolerance, though it's about all of those things. Yeah, it wasn't great today either, was it? We need to figure out how to make this stuff better, man. Ciao.